Ethan sat at the head of the dining table, his eyes fixed on the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting soft lines across the wooden floor of their quiet suburban home. His daughters, Maya and Elsie, giggled in the living room as their cartoons hummed in the background. But something felt off. He could sense it. Then the phone rang. He picked it up, expecting another supplier call for their fashion brand. But the voice on the other end wasn't calm. It was shaking. A stranger. A nurse. "Are you the husband of Clara Anderson?" the woman asked. "There's been an accident. You need to come quickly." Ethan's heart stopped. The next 10 minutes were a blur. Shoes barely tied. He sped through traffic, running red lights and honking past every delay. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. He kept whispering, "Please be okay. Please. God, let her be okay." At the hospital, the smell of antiseptic hit him hard. A nurse guided him through narrow corridors, past other worried families. Then he saw her, his Clara, lying unconscious on a gurney, her face pale, a deep bruise across her forehead. Tubes ran in and out of her. Machines beeped like distant thunder. The doctor pulled him aside. His voice was calm, too calm for the weight of what he was about to say. "Your wife has sustained severe spinal trauma," he began. "At this point, it's uncertain. She might not be able to walk again. It's not permanent. Yet, we'll need time to see how her body responds to treatment." Ethan stood frozen. Couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Clara, the woman who danced barefoot in their studio, who chased their daughters around the house in the morning, who built everything with him, might never walk again. For the next few weeks, Ethan poured his soul into caring for her. He washed her hair gently in the hospital room, spoon-fed her oatmeal, stayed up late researching treatments. When she cried in frustration, he kissed her forehead and reminded her of their wedding vows. In sickness and in health, he whispered every night, "We'll get through this." The business suffered. Emails went unanswered. Orders backed up. But Ethan didn't care. Not now. Not when the love of his life needed him most. One afternoon, as he adjusted her pillows and helped her into her wheelchair, the hospital door creaked open. A familiar voice called out, "Clara?" And there she was, Vanessa, tall, polished, stunning in a fitted dress. Vanessa walked in with a bouquet of fresh tulips and an expression too perfect to be real. She was Clara's childhood best friend, once inseparable, until she moved out of the country years ago. The news of Clara's accident had reached her through an old friend. Clara's face lit up with surprise. "Vanessa? What are you? How did you know?" "I had to come," Vanessa said, bending down for a hug. "I couldn't believe what I heard. I'm here to help. Anything you need." Ethan watched cautiously from the corner. He didn't trust easily, but Clara seemed happy to see her. And truthfully, they needed help. Within days, Vanessa became a regular presence. She volunteered to help with daily routines, brushing Clara's hair, reading to the girls, even bringing fresh groceries. Ethan returned to the company part-time, leaving Vanessa at home during the day with Clara. But behind closed doors, things were shifting. Subtle touches, lingering glances, late-night chats in the kitchen that ended with 2 long silences. Ethan didn't mean for it to happen. It started with one harmless compliment, then one late-night glass of wine, then her hand touching his on the counter. Guilt wrestled with desire. But Vanessa was relentless. "You've done enough," she whispered one night. You deserve more than this life of burden. He hated how right she made it sound. He loved Clara, but something inside him, something tired and hungry for escape, began to listen. Clara never suspected. She'd fall asleep with a smile, unaware that two people she loved were betraying her just a few feet away. And Ethan, he hated himself for every lie he told. But he didn't stop. Vanessa's manipulation grew bolder. One evening, she leaned close and said, "You're wasting your potential. Sell the company. Start fresh. Just you and me. Somewhere far away. Imagine the freedom. The peace." Ethan hesitated. The company wasn't just a business. It was built by both of them, Clara's designs, his management. But the more he thought about it, the more the idea tempted him. No more wheelchairs. No more pity. Just a new life. Days later, he did it. Sold the company for less than it was worth. Closed the bank accounts. Left a letter on the kitchen counter that simply read, "I'm sorry." He walked out the door with Vanessa and never looked back. Back in the house, the silence was deafening. Clara found the letter after calling out for him and receiving no reply. Her hands trembled as she read it. Her breath caught in her throat. She tried to shout, but her voice broke. Her body gave in. She collapsed on the floor, hitting her head on the edge of the coffee table. The girls screamed. Neighbors came running. An ambulance was called again. As they wheeled her into the emergency room, her eyes fluttered open one last time. And this time, she didn't cry. She just whispered, "Why?" And the world went dark. Ethan didn't sleep well that first night in Paris. The hotel room was beautiful, sleek, filled with gold-trimmed mirrors and silk sheets, but his mind wouldn't rest. Vanessa lay beside him, curled up in the king-size bed, her perfume lingering in the air. He stared at the ceiling, haunted by a face he had left behind. Clara's face. Everywhere he turned, guilt whispered louder, but Vanessa had a way of quieting it. She leaned over in the morning, kissed him softly, and said, "You did what you had to. You chose yourself." Ethan nodded. He needed to believe that. He needed to survive the weight of what he'd done. Back home, chaos unfolded. Clara spent 2 days in the hospital. Her blood pressure had spiked from the emotional trauma, and her heart had weakened. The doctors warned that stress could kill her. But all Clara did was stare at the ceiling and whisper one name, Ethan. The girls didn't understand. Maya cried every night, asking when Daddy would come home. Elsie, younger, simply stared at the front door. Neither of them knew what betrayal was, but they could feel something had cracked, something permanent. The hospital staff tried to comfort Clara, but nothing reached her, until a man walked in one quiet morning, a stranger in a navy blue suit, holding a simple bouquet of sunflowers. His name was Donovan Hayes, Nigerian-born, Canadian-based businessman. The nurses told him about Clara's story. Something about it moved him. He stood at the edge of her bed. "You don't know me," he said gently, "but I know pain when I see it. And I believe your story doesn't end here." Clara blinked, said nothing, but her eyes, distant and cold, began to warm just slightly. Meanwhile, Ethan and Vanessa explored their new world. Dinners by candlelight, shopping trips, laughing in cafes like teenagers. But every time Vanessa touched his hand, Ethan remembered Clara holding his during the worst days. Guilt swirled like smoke in his chest. One night, while they strolled along the River Seine, Vanessa spoke. "I want to settle here," she said. I've always dreamed of living in Europe, and now that we're here, you can start over. We can even get married." Ethan hesitated. "Married? Already?" She laughed softly. "What's stopping you? Clara's not in your life anymore. This is our time." He smiled weakly, but inside, something pulled back, a small, sharp instinct warning him. But he ignored it. He always ignored his instincts when Vanessa smiled. Back in Nigeria, Donovan returned daily, not as a savior, but as a friend. He read to Clara, bought coloring books for the girls, fixed the kitchen light. Slowly, Clara's spark returned. It wasn't romantic at first. It was healing, safe. One evening, after a physical therapy session, Clara surprised the nurse by moving her toes. "You felt that?" the nurse asked, shocked. Clara nodded, eyes welling up. For the first time in weeks, she cried not from pain, but from hope. Donovan offered to take her and the girls to Canada for advanced treatment. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "This is just me doing what I wish someone had done for my own mother." Clara said yes. They flew out within 2 weeks. The flight was quiet, but in Clara's heart a fire had begun to burn, not of revenge, not of anger, but rebirth. In Paris, Ethan found himself alone in a cafe. Vanessa had gone out shopping. His phone buzzed, an email from his former company. Apparently, Vanessa had begun liquidating leftover shares. She was transferring money into a private account. Ethan blinked. Cold panic gripped him. When she returned, he asked her directly. She smiled, unbothered. "I thought we agreed, new life, new control." "But you didn't even talk to me." "Oh, Ethan," she interrupted, "are you going to start being difficult now?" Her voice, once soft and sweet, had a sharpness to it. Something changed. Or maybe it had always been there, and Ethan was only now noticing. In Canada, Clara's surgery was scheduled for a snowy Thursday morning. It lasted 6 hours. When she woke up, her legs felt different. Strange. Then the doctor came in and asked, "Can you try sitting up?" She did. "And now, try swinging your legs over the bed." She stared at him, then slowly obeyed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But she did it. She stood, and everyone in the room clapped. Maya and Elsie hugged her like their lives depended on it. And somewhere deep in Clara's chest, her heart finally let go of the last remaining piece of Ethan. Donovan was there the whole time. He didn't push. He didn't rush her. But 1 month later, as they walked together in the snow-covered park, he took her hand gently. "I know you've been through hell," he said, "but if there's room in your heart, I'd like to build a life with you, you and the girls." Clara smiled, not a broken smile, not a grateful one, a real one. She nodded, and this time, love didn't come with betrayal. It came with peace. Far away, Ethan's world collapsed in slow motion. Vanessa disappeared with the loss of the money. She left behind a note and a fabricated report accusing him of fraud. He was arrested days later. Spent 4 years in a French prison. Lost everything. And when he was finally released and deported back to Nigeria, he returned a hollow man. Jobless. Ashamed. Alone. He became a driver. Took whatever gigs he could find. Until one day, someone requested a long-term private driver. He showed up for the interview, and when the door opened, his knees buckled, because standing there, in full health, dressed in elegance, was Clara, and beside her, the man who owned the house, her husband, Donovan. Ethan didn't say a word. Clara didn't smile. But her eyes, they didn't hold hatred, only strength. The same strength he once walked away from. And now, he would open the car door for her. Every morning. The morning was calm in Ontario. A fresh layer of snow blanketed the sidewalks, and soft light filtered through the curtains of the Hayes residence. Clara sat by the window with a blanket around her legs, sipping warm tea as Maya and Elsie played with their new toys on the floor. Her legs, once frozen with fear and memory, now moved with careful strength. She wasn't perfect, but she was free. Donovan entered the room quietly, carrying a basket of freshly folded clothes. He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "You look peaceful," he said. Clara smiled. "I feel lighter." He sat beside her. "We've come a long way." That evening, they had dinner by the fireplace, roasted vegetables, jollof rice, and grilled chicken. Elsie made jokes. Maya shared a school poem she wrote. It was the first time Clara realized her daughters were thriving, not surviving, thriving. And maybe, just maybe, so was she. But peace never arrives without a test. The following week, Donovan's assistant informed them that a potential driver had passed a background check and was being sent for a trial run. Clara didn't think much of it. Her mind was on the upcoming launch of a new fashion studio, a place she built with her own healing hands. The morning of the interview, the doorbell rang. When Clara opened the door, her breath caught. It was him. Ethan. He stood there, thinner, older, with sunken cheeks and tired eyes. His shirt was pressed, his shoes clean, but his soul looked worn. For a moment, neither spoke. Just two ghosts meeting at the doorway of a life that moved on. Donovan appeared behind her, cheerful. "You must be the driver," he said, extending a hand. "Come in." Ethan shook it slowly. "Yes, sir. Ethan Walker." Clara turned away quickly and walked into the kitchen. Her hands trembled slightly, but her face remained calm. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't shout. That part of her was gone. Over dinner, Donovan mentioned that the new driver reminded him of someone from a dream. Clara gave a soft laugh. "Dreams are funny like that," she said. That night, Ethan parked the car in the garage and sat behind the wheel for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. The woman he had left in pieces was now the wife of the man he served. And somehow, she looked more alive than ever. Days turned into weeks. Ethan drove the girls to school, picked up deliveries, waited patiently outside Clara's studio while she hosted design meetings. She never spoke about the past, never brought up his betrayal, but her silence was powerful, more cutting than anger. One afternoon, while Donovan was away on a business trip, Ethan found himself alone with Clara in the living room. She was organizing fabric samples on the table. He cleared his throat. "Clara." She didn't look up. I just want to say I'm sorry." Still no response. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it." She paused, her hand still. "You hurt me," she said softly. "You didn't just leave me crippled. You left me for dead. You sold my dreams. You sold your daughter's peace. And you walked away." Ethan lowered his head. "But I survived," she continued. "Not because of you, but in spite of you." Tears welled up in his eyes. "Vanessa lied to me. She used me, accused me of fraud. I spent 4 years in prison, alone. Clara finally looked at him. You thought you were suffering because you betrayed you, but the real pain was what you did before that. He sobbed quietly. I've lost everything. No, she said gently. You lost what you gave away. That's different. He nodded, broken. I just wanted a second chance. Clara stood and walked toward the window. Sometimes, second chances don't come in the form you expect. Sometimes, they come as a job, a seat behind a wheel, a reminder. From that day, Ethan said little. He came and went with humility. He became not just a driver, but a silent observer of the life he abandoned. He watched Donovan treat Clara like royalty. Watched the girls grow up into confident young ladies. He drove them to music lessons, soccer practice, and dance recitals, always sitting in the shadows. One evening, after a studio event, Clara was the last to leave. Ethan held the door for her. She turned to him and said, You're not the same man I married, and thank God, I'm not the same woman you left. Ethan smiled weakly. I know. And I don't hate you, she added, because if you hadn't left, I wouldn't be here. In that moment, Ethan felt something break loose inside him, not guilt, but release. She had let go, and now, so could he. The next day, he turned in his keys. Donovan asked him why. You're dependable, he said. We trust you. Ethan simply replied, Thank you, but I've driven far enough. It's time I walk, even if it's alone. As he walked down the driveway with his suitcase in hand, Clara watched from the balcony, not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. She turned back to her daughters playing inside, and shut the door behind her. Winter melted into spring. Flowers bloomed outside the Hayes residence, and the warmth that filled the air mirrored the peace growing within Clara's heart. She no longer looked behind her. Her eyes were set ahead, on her girls, on her studio, and on the quiet strength of the man who stood by her through storms she never expected to survive. The fashion studio, named Clara Grace Designs, was now the talk of Ontario. It wasn't just a place for clothing. It was a space where wounded women came to find beauty again, inside and out. Clara had hired 3 other women who were also survivors of hardship. Together, they sewed, designed, and inspired. Donovan became her biggest supporter. He'd show up at launch events wearing her suits. He'd brag about her to strangers in elevators. At home, he still brought her tea every morning, just as he did when she couldn't walk. One quiet evening, Clara found him in the backyard with Elsie asleep on his lap and Maya reading a book beside him. You're a good father, she whispered from the door. He looked up and smiled. I'm just doing my part. She stepped outside, sat beside him, and gently placed her hand over his. I never thought I'd be able to love again, but I do. He said nothing, but the way his fingers wrapped around Hayes said everything. The next day, she announced it publicly, their wedding date. It would be small, private, elegant, not because she wanted to hide, but because she had learned the value of quiet joy. The venue was a sunlit greenhouse filled with orchids and soft music. Maya and Elsie wore matching lilac dresses, and Clara walked down the aisle not with a limp or a cane, but with grace and confidence. Donovan's eyes never left hers, and when the officiant asked if he would take Clara as his wife, he replied without hesitation, I already have. As they exchanged vows, people wept, not because it was sad, but because love that survives fire is rare. And in that moment, Clara wasn't the woman who was left behind. She was the woman who rose. Far away, in a smaller part of the city, Ethan watched from the edge of a crowd. He had come not to interrupt, but to see, to witness the ending of a story he had ruined and the beginning of one he could never belong to. He didn't approach her. He didn't need to. She had already said everything with her silence. That night, Clara and Donovan returned home to a quiet celebration. The girls danced around the living room while Clara laughed until she cried. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a homecoming. Donovan surprised her with a gift. A framed photo of her first steps after surgery, the moment her life restarted. "I wanted you to remember," he said. "Not what you lost, but what you reclaimed." Clara clutched the frame to her chest. "You gave me more than love. You gave me back myself." In the months that followed, Clara's studio expanded. She began traveling to speak at women's empowerment conferences, sharing her story with those who needed hope the most. Every speech ended the same way. Sometimes the greatest gift is not being rescued, but being believed in. Maya and Elsie flourished too. Maya began painting, her drawings filled with color and warmth. Elsie started writing songs, most of them about bravery and home. One day, while packing for a speaking trip to Vancouver, Clara received a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a folded note and a photo. The note read, "Thank you. I'm working at a mechanic shop now. It's not much, but it's honest. I see the girls in my dreams. They look happy. That's all I ever wanted. I'm sorry. E." Clara sat on the edge of her bed, holding the paper gently. For a moment, her eyes filled with tears, not for loss, but for the strange way life bends and teaches. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Closure had already come. That night, she told Donovan. He simply nodded and held her close. "You don't owe your past anything," he said, "but it's okay to make peace with it." "I already have," she whispered. Life went on, brighter, fuller, stronger. Clara became a name not just known for fashion, but for survival, for elegance born out of endurance. And every time she looked at her daughters, she knew love didn't leave her. It just waited for her to find herself again. And when she did, it gave her everything. The rain came gently that morning, tapping on the windows like a soft reminder of everything they had survived. Clara stood in the hallway of her studio, gazing at a photo on the wall. Her, Donovan, Maya, and Elsie, all smiling. It wasn't just a picture. It was proof that healing was possible. She had just wrapped her 4th international speaking event and was preparing to host a workshop for women rebuilding their lives. Her story, once buried in betrayal and silence, had become a beacon for thousands. Yet today, something tugged at her spirit, unfinished threads from the past. Later that afternoon, Donovan received a call from the security gate. A visitor had arrived, an older man, requesting to speak to Mr. or Mrs. Hayes in private. When Clara came out and saw him, she didn't freeze. She didn't panic. She simply nodded. Ethan stood in the rain with a soaked jacket, his face weary but honest. His hand shook slightly as he removed his cap. "I'm not here to beg," he said. "I'm here to return something." From a plastic folder, he pulled out a worn envelope. Inside were sketches, Clara's old-fashioned drawings, ones he had taken when selling the company. "I found them in a box I never opened," he said. "They are yours. I should have given them back long ago." Clara took them gently. She looked at the water-stained paper, then at him. "Thank you." He hesitated. "I also wanted to say, I saw your last interview. About survival. You were strong. You still are." Clara nodded again. "I had no choice." "I used to think strength was about control," he admitted. "But watching you now, I realize it's about release." For a brief second, there was silence. No bitterness, no blame. Just two people who had traveled through fire and come out on opposite shores. She looked into his eyes. "You've changed." "I had to," he said. "Life didn't give me many choices." Clara gestured to the bench near the garden. "Sit for a moment." They sat under the awning, the smell of rain and roses filling the air. Ethan looked out at the garden. "Do the girls know about me?" "They remember," she replied softly, "but they're not angry anymore. Just curious." He exhaled. "If they ever want to know who I was, you can tell them the truth. I won't hide from it." Clara studied him. "I don't think you're the same man I married, and I'm no longer the woman you left. But I wish you peace." He stood. "That's more than I deserve." Before he left, Clara asked, "What will you do now?" He looked up at the sky. "Keep working. Keep walking. And maybe start writing." She tilted her head. "Writing." Ethan gave a small smile. "About choices, regret, and how not every mistake ends with ruin. Some end with clarity." She watched him walk down the path, the rain easing around him. That evening, Clara placed the recovered sketches in a frame in her office, not as a memory of him, but as a reminder of who she had always been, even in the dark. Months passed. Then a year. Maya graduated middle school. Elsie started her first violin recital. Donovan built her a larger studio space, complete with a gallery and event hall. They hosted charity fashion shows, raising money for women's shelters across Canada and Africa. Clara's story was featured in a documentary, and she was named one of the most influential women of the year. But through it all, she remained grounded, not because of fame, but because she remembered rock bottom. And she never forgot the journey back up. One day, while organizing her workshop files, Clara opened a letter. It was from Ethan. No return address. Just a note. "I finally started writing. Not for the world, just for me. Your strength gave me permission to face my own reflection. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. That's what real strength looks like. I hope you keep rising. E." She folded the letter and placed it in a box labeled Grace. Inside were other notes, quotes, old photos, every symbol of a life once shattered but now made whole. Later that night, she stood on stage at another event. Hundreds of women sat before her. She wore a black and gold dress of her own design, her hair tied up, her voice clear and calm. "When I was abandoned," she began, "I thought my story was over. But it wasn't. It was just changing shape. Pain doesn't get the final word unless you hand it the pen." The crowd leaned in, silent and moved. "I'm not telling you it's easy," she continued. "I'm telling you it's possible. Betrayal isn't your identity, and healing isn't weakness. It's proof that something inside you refused to die." Applause thundered through the hall. Women cried. Some stood. Some simply closed their eyes and smiled. After the event, a teenage girl approached her. "My mom left me when I was young," she whispered. "But hearing you speak, I don't feel invisible anymore. Clara hugged her tightly. You're not invisible. You're becoming. And in that moment, she knew her story had a purpose far beyond her own healing. Her daughters, her marriage, her second chance, her voice, it all mattered. It all began with pain, but it ended with power. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. White right pointing backhand index, subscribe to our channel for more powerful folktale stories that inspire healing, justice, and hope. White right pointing backhand index, like, share, and comment below if you believe in second chances and real strength. White right pointing backhand index, and remember, when someone walks away, it might just be the beginning of your rise. Your story isn't over. It's only changing shape.